Title: Blood on the Cobblestones. Prologue. In the heart of the city, where the streetlights flickered like dying stars, the cobblestone alleys were a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. It was here, in this forgotten part of town, that a sinister presence began to stir, leaving a trail of blood and terror in its wake. Chapter 1. A Night to Remember. Detective Sarah Mitchell had seen her fair share of gruesome crime scenes, but nothing could have prepared her for what she encountered that cold December night. The call had come in just after midnight, summoning her to an alley in the old district. As she arrived, the flashing lights of the police cars cast eerie reflections on the wet cobblestones. The victim lay sprawled on the ground, his lifeless eyes staring blankly at the sky. Blood pooled around his body, mixing with the rain that had begun to fall. Sarah's partner, Detective Tom Harris, stood nearby, his face grim. "What do we have, Tom?" Sarah asked, pulling on her gloves. "Male, mid-30s, multiple stab wounds." "It's a mess, Sarah," Tom replied, shaking his head. Sarah knelt beside the body, her trained eyes scanning for clues. There was something ritualistic about the way the victim had been killed. The wounds were precise, almost methodical. "This wasn't just a random attack," she murmured. "This was planned." As the forensics team arrived to process the scene, Sarah's mind raced. This was the third murder in as many weeks, and the pattern was becoming disturbingly clear. Someone was hunting in the darkness, and they were just getting started. Chapter 2. The First Clues. Back at the precinct, Sarah and Tom pored over the evidence. The three victims had little in common: different ages, different backgrounds, but the method of their murders tied them together. Each had been killed with the same precision, the same cold efficiency. Sarah's desk was cluttered with files and photographs, each one a piece of the puzzle. "There has to be a connection we're missing," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Tom nodded. "Maybe it's time we looked at the old district itself. There's a lot of history there, a lot of dark corners." The old district, once a thriving part of the city, had fallen into decay. Its narrow streets and abandoned buildings were a haven for those who preferred to remain unseen. It was the perfect hunting ground for a predator. The detectives decided to start their investigation at a rundown bar near the latest crime scene. The Rusty Nail was a place where people went to disappear, a dimly lit dive that smelled of stale beer and desperation. As they entered, the bartender eyed them warily. "We're looking for information," Sarah said, flashing her badge. "Anything you can tell us about the murders in the area." The bartender, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, shrugged. "People talk, but most of it's just rumors. They say the old district is haunted, that something evil walks these streets at night." Sarah exchanged a glance with Tom. "Anything more specific?" The bartender hesitated. "There's a guy, calls himself the Whisper. Knows a lot about what goes on around here. But he's not easy to find." "Then we'll find him," Sarah said, determination hardening her voice. "And we'll stop whoever's behind these killings." Chapter 3. The Whisper. Tracking down the Whisper was no easy task. He was a ghost, a phantom who moved through the city's underbelly with ease. But Sarah and Tom were relentless, following every lead, no matter how tenuous. Their persistence paid off when a street informant directed them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the old district. The building was a crumbling relic of the past, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Sarah's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a figure huddled in the corner. The Whisper was a wiry man with sharp features and eyes that gleamed with intelligence. "Detectives," he said, his voice soft and raspy. "I've been expecting you." Sarah stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "We need information about the murders." The Whisper nodded. "I know who's behind them. Or rather, what?" Tom frowned. "What do you mean, what?" "The killer is not just a man. He's something else, something old and malevolent. They call him the Harbinger." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "The Harbinger?" The Whisper leaned closer, his eyes intense. He's been here before, long ago. Every few decades, he returns, and the streets run red with blood. He's a part of this city's dark history. Sarah's mind raced. Could it be true? Could they be dealing with something supernatural? How do we stop him? The whisper smiled, a cold, mirthless smile. You can't. You can only survive. But I can help you understand. Meet me tomorrow night, at the old church. There's something you need to see. Chapter 4. The Old Church. The old church stood at the edge of the district, its steeple piercing the night sky like a jagged tooth. It had been abandoned for years, its congregation long gone. Sarah and Tom arrived just before midnight, their nerves on edge. The whisper was waiting for them inside, his form barely visible in the dim light. This place has history, he said. It was once a sanctuary, but now it hides a terrible secret. He led them down a narrow staircase into the church's basement. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in around them. At the bottom, they found a hidden chamber, its walls covered in ancient symbols. This is where it began, the whisper said. The Harbinger was summoned here, centuries ago. He feeds on fear and despair, and he won't stop until he's consumed us all. Sarah stared at the symbols, trying to make sense of it all. How do we fight something like this? The whisper handed her an old, leather-bound book. This contains the rituals used to summon and banish him. It's dangerous, but it's your only hope. Tom looked skeptical. You really expect us to believe this? The whisper's eyes were cold. Believe what you want, detective. But the bodies are real, and so is the danger. Use the book, or more will die. Chapter 5. A Desperate Plan. Back at the precinct, Sarah and Tom examined the book. It was filled with strange incantations and diagrams, a guide to dark magic. This is insane, Tom muttered. We're cops, not occultists. Sarah nodded. I know, but if there's even a chance this can help us stop the killer, we have to try. They decided to perform the banishment ritual at the next crime scene, hoping to trap the Harbinger. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. As they prepared, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The city's shadows seemed to close in around them, and a sense of impending doom hung in the air. Chapter 6. Confrontation. The ritual site was set, the symbols drawn, and the incantations memorized. Sarah and Tom waited in the darkness, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. At midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. The Harbinger was tall and gaunt, his eyes glowing with malevolence. He moved with an unnatural grace, his presence radiating evil. Sarah stepped forward, the book clutched in her hands. Stop right there. The Harbinger smiled, a cruel, mocking smile. You think you can stop me? I am eternal. Tom began the incantation, his voice shaking. The symbols on the ground began to glow, and the air filled with a strange energy. The Harbinger's smile faltered. What are you doing? Sarah joined in, her voice steady. The Harbinger screamed, a sound that pierced the night. He lunged at them, but an invisible barrier held him back. The ritual reached its climax, and with a final, desperate cry, the Harbinger vanished, consumed by the light. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. The city slowly began to heal. The murders stopped, and the sense of dread lifted. Sarah and Tom were hailed as heroes, but they knew the truth. They had faced something beyond their understanding, and they had survived. But the scars remained. The old district still held its secrets, and Sarah knew that darkness could return. She stood on the cobblestone streets, looking out over the city she had sworn to protect. The shadows were still there, lurking just out of sight. But now she was ready. Whatever came next, she would be there to face it.